Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of over 4,700, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on to watch the video.
An explosive oversight hearing erupted as Rep. Thomas Massie directly challenged the Department of Justice over alleged redactions and handling of Epstein-related records, raising questions about transparency, accountability, and missing disclosure in federal documents.
Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm gonna unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files. But he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm gonna answer this question.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman.
This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back?
Mr.
Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So I'm gonna put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you in. This guy has Trump
Gentlemen.
derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen,
You need to
time
get
out.
on
I want you to
these
watch the
matters.
video.
Chairman, please restore his
Mr.
time
Hyde,
and remind the witness of the rules
There
here.
is
Time.
no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't-
bigger than
when you can't-
Watergate.
when I don't answer a question the way
This
you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to
most
know at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has
Which,
expired.
may she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
This exchange between Representative Thomas Massie and Attorney General Pam Bondi centers on one of the most sensitive and politically charged categories of oversight: how the Department of Justice handles disclosure in high-profile criminal files, specifically those connected to Jeffrey Epstein. At the core of Massie's argument is a procedural claim, not just a political one. He is not only questioning what information was released, but how it was released. The focus on redactions, metadata, and document structure reflects a broader oversight concern: whether the DOJ is consistently applying privacy protections for victims while also maintaining transparency standards required under congressional disclosure legislation. In practical terms, he is arguing that inconsistent redactions, especially in documents involving survivor-related material, can create unintended exposure risks, even when names are partially obscured or contextually embedded elsewhere in the file set. Massie escalates the issue further by pointing to documents labeled in ways that suggest classification as co-conspirator material, arguing that some names or references appear inconsistently across releases. From an oversight perspective, that raises a familiar tension in federal investigations: the balance between investigative integrity, prosecutorial discretion, and public disclosure obligations. When those systems are not aligned, or when releases are perceived as incomplete or uneven, lawmakers tend to interpret it as either procedural failure or institutional overreach, depending on their political framing. Bondi's response, by contrast, is rooted in institutional defense. Her position emphasizes correction mechanisms and legal review standards, asserting that once issues were identified, they were addressed quickly, and that all disclosures remain governed by established DOJ protocols. That is a standard executive branch argument in oversight hearings, that isolated errors do not imply systemic misconduct, and that the governing framework already contains safeguards designed to prevent exactly the kind of harm being alleged. The real friction point in this exchange is not just factual disagreement, it is epistemic. Massie is operating from the premise that transparency legislation requires maximal disclosure of internal decision-making around redactions, while Bondi is operating from the premise that disclosure must remain constrained by legal thresholds, privacy protections, and prosecutorial standards that cannot be overridden by congressional demand alone. Those two frameworks often collide in oversight hearings, especially when emotionally charged subject matter like Epstein-related investigations is involved. What elevates the tension is the implicit third layer, trust. Even when agencies assert compliance with law